When our father died, my sister, my brother, and I thought the hardest part was already behind us. Dad had been sick for almost 2 years. Not sick in a dramatic, movie kind of way. It was slower than that. Quieter. First, he forgot appointments. Then he forgot names. Then he started asking the same question 3 times in the same conversation, looking embarrassed each time he realized he had already asked it. By the end, he needed help with everything. His bills. His medication. His doctor visits. His mail. And after he was gone, we thought at least one thing would be simple. The life insurance policy. Dad had mentioned it for as long as I could remember. He called it, "the one promise I made your mother." Our mom died when I was 15. She had cancer. Dad was 46, suddenly raising 3 kids alone, Daniel, who was 23, me, 18, and our little sister, Emma, who was 9. After Mom died, Dad changed. He became careful with money in a way that sometimes made us laugh. He clipped coupons. He repaired things instead of replacing them. He drove the same Ford pickup until the doors squeaked every time he opened them. But he also worked harder than anyone I knew. He was a maintenance supervisor at a public school district outside Columbus, Ohio. Not glamorous work. He fixed boilers, replaced broken locks, dealt with burst pipes at 6 in the morning, and somehow always came home smelling like metal, dust, and coffee. He put Daniel through community college. He helped me with my nursing degree. He paid for Emma's braces. And every January, he sat at the kitchen table with a stack of documents, a yellow legal pad, and his reading glasses low on his nose. That was when he handled the grown-up stuff. Taxes. Mortgage statements. Retirement accounts. And the life insurance policy. Whatever happens to me, he used to say, tapping the thick blue folder, "You kids won't have to worry." That sentence stayed with us. So after the funeral, when the 3 of us sat in the office of the insurance company's claims representative, I was expecting sadness. I wasn't expecting confusion. The woman behind the desk was named Ms. Alvarez. She had a calm voice and the kind of expression people learn when they spend their days speaking to grieving families. She placed a folder in front of us. "I'm very sorry for your loss," she said. "Your father had maintained this policy for more than 28 years. Daniel leaned forward immediately. He had always been the impatient one. Even as a kid, he opened birthday presents before anyone else had finished singing. "So what happens now?" he asked. "How long until the claim is paid?" Ms. Alvarez looked down at the paperwork. The original death benefit was $500,000. Emma let out a breath. I remember reaching for her hand under the table. $500,000. It sounded unreal. Not because we were greedy. At least, I don't think we were. But Dad had left medical bills. There was still a mortgage balance on the house. Emma had student loans. I had 2 kids, a car payment, and a husband who had recently been laid off. For one brief second, it felt like Dad had kept his promise. Then Ms. Alvarez continued. After outstanding policy loans and accrued interest, she said, the payable benefit is $142,618. Nobody spoke. I thought I had heard her wrong. Daniel frowned. What loans? Ms. Alvarez looked at him, then at me. Your father borrowed against the cash value of the policy over several years. Emma's fingers tightened around mine. How much? I asked. Approximately $243,000 in total loans and interest. The room went still. I stared at the number on the page. $243,000. Dad had borrowed almost half the value of the policy. But that wasn't what made my stomach drop. It was the dates. There were loans taken out in 2018. Then 2019. Then 2020. Then 2 separate withdrawals in 2021. Dad's memory problems started in late 2019. By 2021, he could barely log into his own email account. He had trouble remembering what day it was. He once called me at work because he couldn't figure out how to turn on the TV remote. I looked at Daniel. He was pale. Not sad. Not shocked. Pale. Who authorized these loans? I asked. Ms. Alvarez paused. The policy owner did. Or an authorized representative acting under legal authority. Was there an authorized representative? I asked. She opened another document. Your brother, Daniel Harper, was listed as the financial power of attorney beginning in 2020. Emma turned toward him so fast her chair scraped the floor. You had power of attorney? Daniel swallowed. I helped Dad with paperwork, he said. You never told us that, I said. It wasn't a big deal. I looked back at the loan history. The first loan after Dad's diagnosis had been for $40,000. Then $65,000. Then $32,000. Then $50,000. Then a final loan of more than $50,000. Each one had been processed with signatures, forms, and confirmation letters sent to Dad's address. The house Daniel was living in. The house Dad had moved into with him after his health declined. My brother had become Dad's primary caregiver, at least on paper. He had told us it was easier that way. He said Dad needed company. He said the house was closer to Dad's doctors. He said he had a spare room. At the time, I had believed him. Now I could barely look at him. Did you take this money? Emma asked. Daniel's face tightened. I did what I had to do. What does that mean? I asked. It means Dad had expenses. $243,000 of expenses? You have no idea what it cost to take care of him. I felt anger rise in my chest, hot and immediate. I know exactly what it costs, I said. I'm a nurse. I helped pay for his prescriptions. I drove him to appointments when you said you were too busy. And he had Medicare. He had supplemental coverage. What could possibly cost that much? Daniel pushed back from the table. Ms. Alvarez quietly gathered her papers. Daniel stood. Of course, he said bitterly. The second money comes up, everyone wants a lawyer. Then he walked out. For the next 3 days, no one heard from him. Emma called him 12 times. I sent messages that started angry, then became calmer, then became desperate. No response. Finally, on the 4th night, I drove to his house. It was raining. The kind of Ohio rain that makes every streetlight look blurry and yellow. Daniel's truck was in the driveway. So was Dad's old Ford. Seeing it there broke something in me. Dad had loved that truck. He washed it every Saturday morning, even when he was too tired to do much else. He kept a flashlight, a blanket, jumper cables, and a box of peppermints in the glove compartment. Now it sat under Daniel's porch light, dirty and neglected. I knocked. Daniel opened the door after almost a minute. He looked worse than he had at the insurance office. He hadn't shaved. His eyes were red. The house smelled like old takeout food and cigarette smoke. "Why are you here?" he asked. "Because you won't answer your phone." "I don't have anything to say." "You borrowed against Dad's life insurance." He looked away. "Come in," he said. I followed him into the kitchen. There were unopened envelopes stacked on the counter. A few had bright red lettering across the front. Final notice. Past due. Urgent response required. I looked at him. "Are you in debt?" Daniel laughed once, without humor. "You think?" "How much?" He didn't answer. "Daniel." He sat down at the kitchen table and covered his face with both hands. "I don't know," he said. "Maybe 100,000. Maybe more." I felt cold. "What did you do?" "For Dad," he said. "No. Don't do that. Don't say it was for Dad unless it was actually for Dad." He lifted his head. For the first time, I saw fear in his face. Real fear. "Dad knew," he said. I stared at him. "What?" "He knew about the first loan." "The first one?" "He signed it." "Why?" Daniel looked toward the living room, where Dad's old recliner sat against the wall. "Because I asked him." "Why would you ask him?" "Because I was drowning." The rain tapped against the kitchen window. Daniel told me everything. Or at least, what he said was everything. 5 years earlier, he had started a small contracting business. At first, it went well. He did kitchen remodels, decks, bathroom renovations. He hired 2 workers. Then 3. Then a client refused to pay him after a major job. Then another job went wrong because a subcontractor disappeared halfway through. Then his business credit cards filled up. Then he took out a loan. Then another. He told himself he only needed 1 good month to catch up. But 1 good month never came. By the time Dad's health started declining, Daniel was already behind on everything. His mortgage. His truck payment. His business loan. His credit cards. Then Dad moved in. Daniel said he had meant to help Dad. At least in the beginning. But caregiving changed everything. He had to miss work for appointments. He stopped taking jobs outside the county. He lost clients. His business collapsed. "So you took Dad's money," I said. "I borrowed it." "You borrowed against his life insurance policy." "I was going to pay it back." "With what?" He didn't answer. I stood up. "That policy was for all of us. He was my— That doesn't give you the right." "I was there," he shouted. The sound made me flinch. Daniel stood so fast his chair fell backward. I was there when he woke up confused at 3 in the morning. I was there when he had accidents and didn't know what happened. I was there when he cried because he thought Mom was still alive. I was there when he couldn't remember your name. His voice broke. "You came twice a week. Emma came when she could. But I lived it. Every day. I wanted to argue. Part of me still does. But I knew he wasn't lying about that part. Caregiving had changed him. It had exhausted him. It had made him angry. But pain didn't make what he did right. "Why didn't you tell us?" I asked quietly. "Because I was ashamed." "After the first loan?" "Yes." "And the second?" "Yes." "And after you took $50,000 from a man who didn't always know what year it was?" He looked down. I know. That was the first time he said it. Not an excuse. Not an explanation. Just 3 words. I know. The next morning, Emma and I met with an attorney named Rachel Monroe. She listened without interrupting. We gave her copies of the insurance loan history, Dad's medical records, and the power of attorney document Daniel had used. When she finished reading, she looked at us carefully. Having power of attorney creates responsibility, she said. It does not give someone permission to use another person's assets as their own. Can we get the money back? Emma asked. That depends on where it went, what records exist, whether your father had capacity at the time, and whether Daniel can repay anything. Can he go to jail? I asked. Rachel didn't answer immediately. This could potentially involve civil liability, she said. In some cases, it can also raise questions of financial exploitation. But I don't recommend making decisions based on anger alone. First, we need the facts. That sentence mattered. Because at that point, anger was all I had. I wanted Daniel punished. I wanted him to suffer the way Emma cried when she realized she might not be able to keep Dad's house. I wanted him to feel what I felt every time I pictured Dad sitting at Daniel's kitchen table, signing something he may not have fully understood. But facts came slowly. Over the next 2 months, we learned that some of the money had been used for Dad. Not much, but some. There were receipts for in-home medical equipment. Payments to caregivers. A wheelchair-accessible bathroom renovation. Prescription costs insurance didn't fully cover. A hospital bill from a period when Dad had been transferred between facilities. But most of the money had gone elsewhere. Credit card payments. Daniel's truck. His business debts. Cash withdrawals. Mortgage payments. A vacation rental in Florida from 2 years earlier. When I saw that charge, I almost threw up. Daniel later admitted it had been a trip with his wife and daughter. Dad stayed with a temporary caregiver. Daniel said it was the only vacation his family had taken in years. I told him I didn't care. Because it wasn't his vacation. It was Dad's life insurance policy. Dad's promise. Dad's sacrifice. The lawsuit lasted almost a year. Daniel sold his truck. He sold his tools. He closed the contracting business officially. He and his wife put their house on the market. By the time everything was settled, he had agreed to repay part of the money through the sale of the house and a structured payment plan. It was nowhere close to $243,000. There was no magical ending. No moment when the money came back and everything felt fair. Emma received enough to make a down payment on a small condo. I paid off the medical debt Dad had left behind and put the rest into savings for my daughter's college fund. Daniel lost almost everything. And somehow, that didn't make me feel better. A year after Dad died, I found an envelope inside the blue folder he used to keep at the kitchen table. It had been tucked between old tax documents. The envelope had my name on it. Just mine. Inside was a short letter in Dad's handwriting. It wasn't dated. It said, "If something happens and your brother is struggling, don't let anger make you forget he is family. But don't let love make you ignore the truth either." I read it 3 times. Then I cried harder than I had at the funeral. Dad knew. Maybe not everything. Maybe not the full amount. Maybe not the lies Daniel told himself every time he took another loan. But Dad knew his oldest son was struggling. And he also knew what kind of people we might become if we let money turn us against each other forever. I wish I could tell you Daniel and I are close now. We're not. Not the way we were before. We see each other at birthdays. At Christmas. At Emma's place when she hosts Thanksgiving. We can sit in the same room. We can talk about the weather. We can ask about each other's kids. But there is a distance between us that wasn't there before. Trust doesn't come back because someone says sorry. And grief doesn't make betrayal disappear. Still, I think about Dad's letter sometimes. Don't let anger make you forget he is family. But don't let love make you ignore the truth either. Maybe that is what inheritance really is. Not money. Not a house. Not a policy with a number printed on it. Maybe inheritance is the burden of deciding what you will carry forward. The secrets. The mistakes. The forgiveness. The boundaries. The truth. Dad thought his policy would protect us after he was gone. In a way, it did. Just not how any of us expected. What would you do if you discovered your sibling had used a parent's life insurance policy without telling anyone? Subscribe for more emotional American family stories about money, inheritance, insurance, hidden debt, legal conflict, and life-changing secrets.
Yeah. You know what it is. Yeah. You pull up with your hair tight, sweats on, still a masterpiece. Talking about your long day, lay your worries right on me. You say you hate when I'm on tour, different times on different sheets. But you the only place I rest when the noise is out of reach. Got your lipstick on my hoodie, that's my favorite kind of stain. You be tripping about those comments, girl, they don't even know your name. You don't care about the numbers, you just ask if I'm okay. That's the type of love that make us sit and wanna pray. You tell me, slow down, you moving too fast. Every room you